Chapter 3974. Token of Love. Dmo Xian caught the jade pendant and didn't look at it. Instead, he lowered his head and bit the young lady's nose. Having you as a lover is enough for me, how would I dare to have other lovers? Don't dare or don't want to. Yi Qing Luo pushed him as she snorted. Dmo Xian hugged her tightly, his voice was gentle and pampering, don't want and don't dare. Humph! Yi Qing Luo raised her chin, looking like a noble queen as she glanced at the jade pendant in Dmo Xian's hand. Seeing that you are so obedient, I will give you a chance to explain. Dmo Xian's line of sight fell on Yi Qing Luo. His deep eyes gazed deeply at the young lady's face. His eyes were filled with pampering and tenderness. Yi Qing Luo, who was being stared at, unnaturally turned her head and was about to push the man to explain. But her face was covered by a ball of warmth. The man's domineering kiss fell on her lips. The breath was boiling hot, as if it was going to swallow her up. The arms that encircled her delicate body were constantly increasing the strength. Like he wanted to rub her into his body. The sudden passion made Yi Qing Luo unable to control herself as her whole body softened in Dmo Xian's arms. Until she was out of breath. The man then let go of her. Yi Qing Luo lay on his chest, her face flushed red. After gasping for breath for a while, she raised her fist and hammered his chest. She raised her head and glared at him. I'm talking to you about serious matters. Are you feeling guilty? Are you trying to divert my attention by doing this? The young lady's face was flushed red and her eyes were filled with seduction. This stare had no fierce expression at all. Instead it seemed unique. Dmo Xian's eyes deepened by a few notches. He hugged the young lady tightly, his chin rested on the young lady's slender shoulder and half of his face was buried under the young lady's fine black hair. The erect nose and soft thin lips brushed past the young lady's skin from time to time. Warm breath sprayed down. Yi Qing Luo's legs softened a little. It's your fault. The man's husky voice came into her ears. That slightly hoarse voice was very magnetic. Teasing Yi Qing Luo's heartstrings. Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but struggle and pushed the man's head away. What do you mean by blame me? You are tempting me. Dmo Xian's head was in the young lady's palm and his arms were still tightly wrapped around her. I obviously know that my self-control, in front of you, can't even withstand one blow. How did I seduce you? She was obviously questioning him about his little lover. They were obviously aggressive. How did it become a temptation? Was he blaming her for being too beautiful? Dmo Xian's eyes sunk slightly, like the starry sky, as he looked deeply into Yi Qing Luo's eyes. I miss you, your expression, makes me want to. He dragged out the ending syllable and suppressed his voice, as he whispered into Yi Qing Luo's ears, eat you. Yi Qing Luo, she had forgotten that Dmo Xian was a beast. There was no justification for beasts. Yi Qing Luo stared at him and pushed away the man's deliberately tempting head, avoiding the man's faintly discernible warm breath. Do you want the chance to explain or not? Dmo Xian nibbled on the slender little hand that was pushing him, as he raised his eyes slightly and gazed at Yi Qing Luo. That pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes was like a pool of spring water, flowing into Yi Qing Luo's heart. That scene was simply mesmerizing. Yi Qing Luo's face, in a flash, turned red. As if it was on fire. Chapter 3975. Evildoer. An absolute evildoer. However, the evildoer who had seduced her would retract his demonic attitude after he had seduced her. Putting on a serious expression, he picked up the forgotten jade pendant and placed it in front of him. With just a glance, he threw the jade pendant on the table beside him. This is my jade pendant, what's wrong? Do you know where it came from? Yi Qing Luo poked the jade pendant and raised her brows. Dmo Xian, Yiqing Luo hooked the jade pendant again and threw it into Dmo Xian's arms. Shadowless City's mysterious maiden claimed to have a close relationship with you. This is the jade pendant you personally gave her. Shadowless City's mysterious maiden. Dmo Xian frowned slightly. Who? Yiqing Luo shrugged. How would I know? Dmo Xian carefully scrutinized the jade pendant, only feeling that it was somewhat familiar, but for a moment he couldn't recall when he had worn this jade pendant, not to mention who he had given this jade pendant to. Most importantly, did he look like someone who would give a jade pendant to others? She came all the way from Shadowless City to Without Embroiling City, holding a jade pendant, wanting to acknowledge you as her kin. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a teasing smile, her words were full of sarcasm. Don't know, no impression. Dmo Xian threw the jade pendant again and stretched out his arms to hug Yiqing Luo. Jealous? There are so many women who admire you. If I were to be jealous of every one of them, would I be able to handle it? Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes and leaned into his arms. Dmo Xian lifted a strand of her hair and laughed lowly. You have provoked quite a number of men. Haven't I been busy too? Yiqing Luo. It means that I have not provoked as many women as you have provoked. Dmo Xian narrowed his eyes slightly, a dangerous glint flashed across his eyes. So, you want to provoke more and make me too busy? Yiqing Luo's little body shuddered. After meeting the man's gaze, she instantly became obedient. After being obedient, she felt that something was wrong. Wasn't she the one questioning Dmo Xian now? Why was she suppressed by him instead? Was she going to rebel? Did she still want to stand up for her wife? Yiqing Luo immediately put on a straight face as she stretched out her hand to push him. Now I'm the one questioning you. What relationship do you have with that Shadowless City's mysterious maiden? Don't change the topic. Aren't you not jealous? Dmo Xian pinched her little face. Yiqing Luo raised her head up high with a "I'm very angry, don't touch me" expression. Jealousy is one thing, your jade pendant is in the hands of another woman, that's another matter. The smile in Dmo Xian's eyes deepened as his long and narrow peach blossom eyes hooked into a wavy arc, like a poppy blossoming. Isn't that simple? Let her explain personally how she got my jade pendant, wouldn't that be enough? Yiqing Luo's brows rose. Shadowless City's mysterious maiden kept on saying that she has a close relationship with you, so close that you even sat at the same table, discussing about poetry and life philosophy. I don't even know who the person is. How intimate do you think we can be? Dmo Xian loved this young lady who was obviously jealous but still pretended not to care. Yiqing Luo clicked her tongue. If Mu Qiulan heard this sentence, her heart would probably be pierced to death. But she had to admit. This sentence made her feel great. But the pleasure wasn't over yet. The man suddenly lowered his voice as he leaned close to her ear. His low and hoarse voice was magnetic and alluring. It was like a little hook, gently teasing her heart. Furthermore, I only want to talk to you. From poetry and life philosophy, to... He paused slightly as his voice became deeper, on the bed. Yiqing Luo. Chapter 3976. I'm serious. Yiqing Luo tugged his wrist. Since you don't have any impression of her, then how did she get this jade pendant? Even if ordinary people wanted to steal your things, they wouldn't be able to do so, right? Dmo Xian held her body tightly and carried her all the way to the bed in the inner room. Then he sat on the bed and circled her from behind. This jade pendant looks familiar, but I haven't seen it for a long time. Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes narrowed. Are you sure it's not a gift from you? After that, she raised her brows and looked up at him. Her slender fingers poked the man's chest. Did you give too many things to girls, so you don't remember them clearly? Other than giving you a token of love. I have never given anything to anyone else. Dmo Xian rested his head on her shoulder as his low and hoarse voice rang beside her ear, very alluring. Yiqing Luo snorted. But the next moment, her body felt light. Her body was changed in another direction, facing Dmo Xian. In her pupils, Dmo Xian's peerless and elegant countenance was reflected in her eyes. Her chin was clasped by the man's slender fingers. A head of black hair fell on Yiqing Luo's face. He leaned over and leaned towards Yiqing Luo. The distance between the two was so close that as long as they moved, their lips would touch. Dmo Xian then stopped his approach. The man's elegant sandalwood scent lingered in between her nostrils. Yiqing Luo's chin was clasped by him, but she was unable to shift her gaze away. Just like that, when their eyes met, the man's thin lips curled up, the pampering and gentleness in his eyes seemed to be able to drown one in it. Still not admitting that you're jealous? Yiqing Luo wanted to shake her head, but her chin was clasped by him, so she could only blink her eyes. No, before the word, yes, could leave her mouth, it was sealed by the man's thin lips. Just a little bit. He then left. I'll give you one more chance to answer. Yiqing Luo's eyes widened. If she didn't admit that she was jealous, was he planning to keep kissing her until she admitted it? Taking advantage of her, made it so open and aboveboard. There was no one else. Dmo Xian seemed as though he didn't notice the emotions in Yiqing Luo's eyes, as he didn't have any intention to let go of her. His eyes were still staring straight at her pink lips. He seemed to be waiting for her to admit that she was jealous. Forced by the man's tyrannical power, she gritted her teeth and glared at Dmo Xian as she said word by word, "Yes, I'm jealous." This time, his manly heart was satisfied, right? However, as soon as she finished speaking, his body suddenly fell backwards. Her back was pressed against the soft bed. Dmo Xian's thin lips curled up slightly as he gave a devilish smile, in order to make it up to Lil Luo, and to make Lil Luo, assured, so. I used my actions to prove that my heart, my body, all belong to you. Yiqing Luo, holy shit. In the end, his ultimate goal was to transform into a beast. The next day, the first thing Yiqing Luo did when she woke up was to kick the man off the bed. It was only after the kick that he realized what was going on. This was the first time she and Dmo Xian were sleeping on the same bed ever since they arrived at the Earth realm, and he was still by her side when she woke up. Dmo Xian, who was kicked onto the ground, was lying lazily on the ground. His underwear hung loosely, revealing his fair and muscular chest. A head of black hair spread out behind him. Early in the morning, that peerless face of his didn't have the usual stern look. On the contrary, it was extremely lazy. Chapter 3978. Yiqing Luo raised her slender brows meaningfully as she looked at Dmo Xian with a teasing look. Your little lover is here personally, how's the overlord's mood? Dmo Xian's expression didn't change at all as his doting eyes looked at the person in his arms as his thin lips curled. What does Madame D think of my mood? Yiqing Luo raised her hand and caressed Dmo Xian's face. Her slender fingers caressed his contours bit by bit. Finally, it landed on his raised lips. Looks like the overlord is very happy. Dmo Xian's eyes deepened. On his lips, the softness of her fingertips and the lady's fragrance filled his body and mind. That was all. But when the young lady looked at him with a light smile, she even deliberately curved her long and narrow eyes, making her look flirtatious and flirtatious. The fiery pink lips curled into a sexy and seductive arc. The tip of her pink tongue temptingly licked her pink lips. Dmo Xian's pupils shrank. His body was tight and taut. Both arms were about to press the young lady into his arms, to ease the surging feelings in his abdomen. But the young lady suddenly raised her hand and pushed him away. That bewitching expression. In a split second, she became quick-witted. Her long and narrow eyes were filled with a teasing smile. Since the other party has sent themselves here, I shall wait quietly for the overlord to give me a reasonable explanation. His arms were empty. Only the young lady's body fragrance was still lingering in his nose. Dmo Xian suddenly felt a sense of emptiness. He looked at the young lady skipping towards the door of the treasure house. That complacent look made him helplessly and dotingly shake his head with a light smile. Following that, he followed the young lady's footsteps. They just entered the treasure house. They saw a few ladies standing in the middle of the hall. They were arguing with Pei Xing about something. Mu Qiulan was still dressed in a white robe with a white veil as she stood behind the lady, as though she was isolated from the world. The surrounding wooden tables and chairs were all broken into pieces as they fell onto the ground in a mess. Even the counter was in a mess. This scene made Yiqing Luo's eyes sink slightly. Looked like these people had started to fight. Under the circumstances of knowing the power behind the treasure house, these ladies still dared to come over and create trouble. Could it be? Did he confirm that he had a reliable backer? Ladies, the Treasures Gathering Trading House has already made it very clear at yesterday's auction. From today onwards, the Treasures Gathering Trading House will be closed for 3 months. Gu Zixi expression was unfriendly, but in order to maintain her image as a treasure trove, she suppressed her anger and explained. Pei Xing's expression darkened even further. Chapter 3979. Mu Qiulan looked at Pei Xing calmly as her voice was calm. I just want Madame D to return the jade pendant to me. After all, that was given to me by the overlord. The first gift has a deep meaning to me. She paused for a moment. Suddenly, she raised her head. There was a slight ripple in her eyes. I hope you can persuade her on my behalf. After all, that belongs to someone else. Even if she snatched it away forcefully, it will not belong to her. This sentence had a hidden meaning. Anyone in the know could tell. Mu Qiulan's thing was not only referring to the jade pendant, but the overlord, this person. Everyone's expression had a subtle change. The gaze they used to look at Mu Qiulan was filled with probing and disbelief. She dared to openly imply that the overlord belonged to her. Could it be? Was there really something between her and the overlord? Otherwise, how would she dare to say that? After all, the overlord was in without embroiling city in the earth realm. If the mysterious young maiden's words were fake, the overlord would know in a minute. In everyone's heart, various thoughts were surging. Pei Xing and Gu Zixi exchanged glances as they frowned, unable to make up their minds. They naturally believed in the relationship between the overlord and All Luo. But Mu Qiulan. That solemn vow didn't seem like she was lying. Pfft. Suddenly, a clear and melodious voice rang in the main hall. That laughter was as clear as a bell, extremely crisp. In an instant, everyone's gazes were focused on him. Following that, everyone saw the main entrance of the treasure exchange. Under the crowd, 2 figures walked in slowly. The young lady was dressed in red, peerlessly beautiful. The man was dressed in purple, peerlessly elegant. He instantly attracted everyone's attention. Almost glued to them, unable to shift away. The one who was laughing, wasn't it that red-robed lady? Yiqing Luo. When Mu Qiulan saw Yiqing Luo, her pupils contracted. But very quickly, her gaze fell onto the man behind Yiqing Luo. The expression under the veil suddenly rose. Her eyes were filled with an excited smile. Following that, Mu Qiulan flew forward and was about to jump into Dmo Xian's arms, overlord. Before she got close, Mu Qiulan was sent flying by an invisible force. Her delicate body fell heavily to the ground. She cried out in pain as she laid weakly on the ground. Raising her head, she looked at Dmo Xian in disbelief. Di Zun. Her beautiful eyes were filled with hurt and disbelief. She could not believe that Dmo Xian would treat her like this. Dmo Xian met with Mu Qiulan's hurt expression and frowned slightly. His expression was indifferent and even the words he spoke were extremely cold. Who are you? These 3 words immediately caused thousands of waves to splash. Sounds of people sucking in cold air could be heard in the surroundings. Chapter 3980. Yiqing Luo expressed. If she was a man, she would also be attracted by this beauty. She didn't know why Qiao Yulu was so confident that she was the most beautiful person in the world. They were all from Linglong Palace. Could it be that when they were at Linglong Palace, Qiao Yulu and Mu Qiulan had never met before? Feeling the surrounding shocked and infatuated gazes, as well as the exclamations, Mu Qiulan's eyes flashed past a glint of complacency. She disdained to use this face of hers to achieve any motive. But it was a lady's nature to love beauty. To be able to see so many people exclaiming in admiration because of her beauty. Naturally, it satisfied her vanity. As for Yiqing Luo, Mu Qiulan shot a disdainful glance at Yiqing Luo. What men liked was her pure and flirtatious face. Unlike Yiqing Luo's aloof feeling no matter where and no matter what, a lady like Yiqing Luo would at most arouse men's desire to conquer her. Once conquered, they would lose interest. Did she really think that she was the woman whom the overlord deeply loved? Didn't she like to be high up, to be looked up to by others? Now, let her, in front of all the big shots from the surrounding forces, pull Yiqing Luo down from her self-righteous altar. Mu Qiulan's lips curled upwards, with some complacency and some contempt. But her voice and words were so gentle, making one feel pity for her, overlord. Do you know, Imperial Madam is too much. She made use of your favor to snatch away the jade pendant which you gave me, and even asked me to ask you to help me get it back. That sweet voice, and that gentle and flirtatious expression. It was totally different from her earlier, pretending to be an elegant profound maiden, totally different. Everyone's gazes turned towards Dmo Xian, waiting for Dmo Xian's reaction. Their hearts were tightly tensed up. Watching the show, they were all extremely nervous. Yiqing Luo crossed her arms, as she looked at the scene in front of her with a smile which didn't look like a smile. She didn't stop, nor did she have any intention to question. Just like the others who were watching the show. Under everyone's gazes, the silent Dmo Xian slightly raised his head as his indifferent gaze, like still water, fell onto Mu Qiulan's face. He was expressionless. She really couldn't tell his emotions. After that, Dmo Xian's fingers moved slightly and a piece of jade pendant appeared in his hand. Mu Qiulan's eyes lit up as she stood up ecstatically and pounced towards Dmo Xian. Right, it's this jade pendant. Overlord, Lan knows that you love Lan the most. You really got the jade pendant back for Lan. She threw herself into Dmo Xian's arms. He even shot a complacent look towards Yiqing Luo's direction. However, history was always strikingly similar. Mu Qiulan pounced. Once again, he was sent flying. Mu Qiulan coughed out a huge mouthful of blood. The onlookers were dumbfounded. Then, he looked at Di Zun's expression. He was so calm and indifferent that he didn't have the slightest emotion. Even when he was looking at Mu Qiulan. In their eyes, there was no such person as Mu Qiulan. After that, Dmo Xian appeared in front of everyone's eyes. He clenched his fist. When he opened his palm again, the powder of the broken jade floated on the ground. He destroyed the jade pendant. He directly crushed it into powder. This action made Mu Qiulan's face instantly turn pale as her pair of eyes stared intently at the scattered powder. The surrounding people were all stunned. What did the overlord mean by this? Why did he crush that piece of jade pendant? Chapter 3981. Mu Chulan's heart suddenly tightened, and she pressed her hand against her chest. Lord, divine Lord, how could you? Tisk tisk. Yi Qing Luo crossed her arms in front of her chest as she raised her eyebrows and looked at Dmo Xian with a smile that didn't look like a smile. Look at how badly you've hurt the young lady. Why did you even destroy the jade pendant? Dirty. Dmo Xian replied. It was just a single word, but it pierced Mu Chulan's heart like a needle. Her pupils constricted. The hand pressing on his heart was also tightening. Slightly pausing for a moment, Dmo Xian opened his mouth and continued, other than you, things that have been touched, are all dirty. The crowd was instantly in an uproar. This time, the overlord's attitude was clear. For Madame D, she even crushed her own jade pendant. This meant that the emperor's wife was still the most important to the overlord. Lord Dizun. Is it because of her that you refuse to acknowledge me? Mu Chulan's voice was trembling. His eyes reddened. Her tears flickered, and she was about to cry. Her appearance caused many of the men present to feel heartache. Just as the crowd was about to speak up for Mu Chulan, a voice suddenly rang out. Mu Chulan clenched her fists tightly and slowly pushed herself up to her feet. That petite body was delicate and weak. When he stood up, he even swayed a few times. After he stood firm, she clenched her fists and raised her head slightly. A determined look appeared on her face that was on the verge of tears. She squeezed her eyes shut and took a deep breath. After that, he opened his eyes and stared at Dmo Xian as he spat out every single word. It's my wishful thinking, it's my fault. Overlord, you can punish me however you want. After saying that, she closed her eyes powerlessly, as if she had no intention of resisting at all. But these words, it sounded very strange. Dmo Xian's brows creased slightly. These words were indeed strange. It was as if her heart had already died. It was as if she was willing to bear all the grievances for the man she loved. The more it was like this, the more it seemed, what kind of secret did she have with Dmo Xian? This move was indeed brilliant. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled upwards as her smile deepened. He had to admit it. Mu Chulan did have some brains. She did this. She was afraid that everyone would treat Dmo Xian as a scumbag. What do you mean by I can punish him however I want? You took out a jade pendant out of nowhere and said that you had a close relationship with the overlord. You even made it seem like you and the overlord. Pei Xing couldn't take it anymore. She frowned and said unhappily. But when she said the last sentence, she was a little embarrassed. She gritted her teeth and continued, you used the name of the overlord to swindle people. Even if you're the mysterious fairy of Shadowless City, you'll have to pay the price for this. Otherwise, in the future, will anyone be able to claim that they have a close relationship with His Majesty? Mu Chulan's body stiffened, her face like dead ashes. Her pitiful eyes looked deeply at Pei Xing. Following that, it returned to Dmo Xian. His eyes were filled with attachment and gentleness. Whatever the overlord says, is what it is. I have no intention of defending myself. Pei Xing was so angry that his face was trembling. What kind of words were those? Mu Chulan was obviously doing this on purpose. Chapter 3982. Gu Zixi words were what everyone was thinking, saying it out in the open. Saying it out in the open. On the contrary, it seemed that Mu Chulan was doing it on purpose. That's right, did the overlord need a woman to compromise for him? If the overlord really had something with her, did he need to be so secretive? Just look at the overlord and the imperial madam, showing off their affection. The overlord was not the kind of person who liked to hide. Even if it was for the imperial madam. It was not to the extent that he didn't dare to admit that he had a relationship with a woman. He was the overlord. So what if he really had a few women by his side? So, the overlord really didn't need that. Gu Zishi continued, rather than using this method to try to avoid punishment, why not explain clearly the origin of that jade pendant, as if mentioning the reason of the jade pendant. Mu Qiulan's eyes suddenly flashed, staring at the scattered jade powder, her fists clenched even tighter. She suddenly raised her eyes and stared at Dmo Xian, her voice trembling, the origin of the jade pendant. The overlord knows it better than anyone. Dmo Xian's eyes were cold and indifferent, meeting Mu Qiulan's gaze. That indifferent emotion, without the slightest fluctuation. It was just a few breaths of time. Mu Qiulan lowered her head in fear. Her delicate body, trembling uncontrollably. Her thoughts were tumbling, she was furious and aggrieved. But, in the end, she still clenched her fists tightly, squeezing out a sentence between her teeth, since the overlord is unwilling to admit, Lan has nothing else to say. Immediately after, she put on an expression of waiting to be trampled upon. Everyone. They all pricked up their ears and held their breath, wanting to listen to gossip about this jade pendant. Why did it reach the tip of her tongue? She swallowed it back again. Why is he putting on this compromising look again? Can't we just gossip happily? Everyone was very impatient. Gu Zishi also frowned, she didn't expect this mysterious fairy to be so stubborn. She was so thick-skinned to this extent. Until now, she still insisted that she was having an affair with the overlord. This kind of behavior. It lasted. It would still make some people feel that. Mu Qiulan was really compromising. After all, this was in front of His Majesty, if this thing is fake. Mu Qiulan should have been scared out of her wits by now. The few of them frowned deeply, thinking of a way to pry open Mu Qiulan's mouth. After a moment of silence, a clear and melodious laughter broke the silence. The young girl's laughter was clear and melodious, like pearls and jade falling on a plate. I've had a question since yesterday. The corners of the young girl's mouth curled up into a faint smile, making her look even more beautiful. How can you prove that the jade pendant was given to you by Xian? After saying that, she placed her slender fingers on her chin. Based on my understanding, if Xian had really given you the jade pendant personally, there's no way he wouldn't admit it. After all, with his status, is there a need to deny it? Mu Qiulan's pupils constricted abruptly, and her fists clenched even tighter. The gaze he shot towards Yiqing Luo was filled with jealousy and hatred. It was as if he had really suffered a huge grievance. Because of her existence. Dmo Xian didn't dare to acknowledge her. That expression made Yiqing Luo almost give birth to a kind of illusion that what Mu Qiulan said was the truth. Yiqing Luo trusted Dmo Xian a lot. And absolutely trusted Dmo Xian. Chapter 3983. Why was it that in front of Dmo Xian, Mu Qiulan was so sure that she indeed had an affair with Dmo Xian? When Mu Qiulan heard Yiqing Luo's words, she only raised her eyelids and looked straight at Yiqing Luo. After a few breaths, she laughed softly. Her laughter was filled with bitterness. Other than the overlord, who else can prove it for me? Her eyes overflowed with a bitter smile. Since the overlord has already chosen you, then. If you want to kill or torture me, it's up to you. Why do you have to intentionally humiliate me? At this point, the corners of her lips twitched mockingly. Didn't the imperial madam look down on me? Why is it that now, you're trying to find an excuse to deny my existence? Should I rejoice that the current me is able to enter your eyes? Mu Qiulan's words, tone and expression, were all too real. The surrounding people were all in a daze. They didn't know who to believe. Although they knew logically that the overlord had no need to lie. But when they saw Mu Qiulan, they only felt that Mu Qiulan had really suffered too much grievance. It made it seem that Yi Qing Luo was being overbearing. You. Suddenly, just as everyone was feeling different, the overlord, who didn't even bother to look Mu Qiulan straight in the eye, and couldn't even be bothered to speak to Mu Qiulan, spoke out. It was just one word. Everyone's attention was drawn over to him. Dmo Xian just raised his eyes. That indifferent handsome side view was very nice. Especially those deep eyes, like a deep abyss, as though it was going to swallow one up. It gave one a kind of unattainable, unapproachable pressure. Everyone's hearts uncontrollably clenched tightly, stuck at their throats, unable to go down, nor up. It was very uncomfortable. It's up to us if you want to kill or torture us. His voice was extremely indifferent, without any fluctuation of emotions. Mu Qiulan looked at that face which she yearned for day and night, looking at the overlord's aloof and indifferent face. Her heart felt like it was being torn into pieces. Dmo Xian's fingers moved, as an invisible pressure pressed down, using this kind of nonsense to sow discord between me and Lil Luo, you deserve to die. His deep cold voice seemed to be able to freeze the air. Mu Qiulan screamed in pain, rolling on the ground. However, the invisible pressure made her unable to resist at all. Only Mu Qiulan's painful howls could be heard throughout the entire treasure exchange hall. Everyone was terrified. She was even more fearful of Dmo Xian's power. They didn't even see the overlord move. He merely glanced at the Empyrean Fairy of Shadowless City. Shadowless City's Empyrean Fairy fell to the ground, powerless to struggle. Just how deep was his profound strength and inner energy to be able to reach such a level? Anyone with a discerning eye could tell. Di Zun was furious. Di Zun was furious. The big shots of the major forces present did not even dare to breathe loudly. Not to mention, those who originally had the intention to speak up for Mu Qiulan had also given up on the idea. But, at this critical juncture, some people did not dare to speak. If someone didn't speak up, they would really die. For example, Mu Qiulan's several daughters who had always been by her side. They knew it very well. Once Mu Qiulan fell. Next, it was their turn. Chapter 3984. Overlord, Lord Mystic Fairy is your woman after all. Even if you love that slut, love Imperial Madam a little more, you can't treat Lord Mystic Fairy in this way. Obviously last night, you and Lord Mystic Fairy were so lovey-dovey. Why now? You pretend not to know Lord Mystic Fairy. Your Majesty, you're a legend that everyone respects. You obviously have a deep relationship with Lord Mystic Fairy, but you intentionally deny it and even tried to silence her. Are you really worthy of the Overlord's honorific? A few young misses wailed and shouted. They even threw themselves beside Mu Qiulan. Just as those young ladies were pouncing towards Mu Qiulan, Dmo Xian's arrogance was slightly retracted. He didn't continue to use his might to oppress Mu Qiulan. That continuous accusation had completely shaped him into a scumbag's image. More and more people were crowding around them. This gossip was getting more and more exciting. Listening to those young ladies' accusations, all of them were stunned. Could it be? Overlord was really related to Shadowless City's Lord Mystic Fairy. Everyone's suspicious gazes. It made Dmo Xian extremely frustrated. If he were to directly kill someone over this matter, there would definitely be other gossip saying that he was guilty. Explanation. A few mouths had already turned black and white upside down. He couldn't be bothered to explain anything. He only cared about. Surely Lil Luo, wouldn't have really misunderstood him, right? Ah Xian. Just as he was thinking about this, he heard a young lady's voice. Dmo Xian's cold eyes converged, and when he looked at Yi Qing Luo, his expression was filled with tenderness. Lil Luo, The explanation was at the tip of his tongue. But it was stopped by the young lady's gaze. The young lady's face was no longer that leisurely expression of watching the show earlier, but had a solemn expression. Her slender brows creased slightly as she walked slowly to Dmo Xian's side. Ah Xian, they don't seem to be lying. Dmo Xian's long arms suddenly hugged the young lady in his arms as his expression was anxious. Lil Luo, they and I are absolutely. I believe you. Yiqing Luo's index finger pressed against Dmo Xian's lips as she curled her lips at him. My man, I naturally believe you. Dmo Xian, then, you mean? Yiqing Luo's brows drooped slightly as a ray of brilliance flashed past her eyes. She pushed Dmo Xian's chest away and looked anxiously at the young ladies who were curled up into a ball on the ground. Earlier you said, last night. Ah Xian and your mysterious maiden, were still in love. Yiqing Luo looked at them, intentionally revealing a suspicious expression. Earlier Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian's voices were extremely soft. The young ladies only saw Yiqing Luo pushing Dmo Xian away and questioning them. Immediately, he felt a little more confident and proud in his heart. That's right. Last night, we saw with our own eyes that His Majesty carried Lady Mystic Fairy into the guest room. The young ladies were still unmarried. When she said this, she was a little shy. However, the target was Dizun. Their pride was greater than their shyness. Carrying the Empyrean fairy into the guest room. A man and a woman entering a room alone, what else could happen? After finishing this sentence, the arrogant woman's confidence surged up as she stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. Yesterday you went to the auction alone and His Majesty wasn't by your side. In actual fact, His Majesty had been waiting to meet our mysterious maiden. Chapter 3985. In the face of the ridicule from the young misses, Yi Zichen didn't say anything. Yiqing Luo's expression didn't change at all. She only waited for them to finish their words before she calmly asked, Are you sure, it was last night? Of course it was last night. The arrogant lady sneered coldly. Relying on the fact that you are the acknowledged woman of the Overlord, you forcefully snatched away the jade pendant which the Overlord had gifted to Mysterious Fairy. The Overlord naturally had to comfort Mysterious Fairy tonight. Saying that, she laughed delightfully. As though she was ridiculing Yiqing Luo for shooting herself in the foot. Thinking that she had bullied Mu Qiulan using her official position. In the end, she pushed the Overlord towards Mu Qiulan. The arrogant lady was waiting for Yiqing Luo to fly into a rage, waiting for her to go berserk. But after laughing for some time, she didn't see any signs of Yiqing Luo going berserk. Her devastatingly beautiful face had an indifferent expression and the smile on her lips had some traces of ridicule and ridicule. Her long and narrow eyes squinted slightly, her imposing manner was pressing. It made one's heart tighten unknowingly, giving birth to an appalled look. She stood beside Dmo Xian. Totally not suppressed by Dmo Xian's imposing manner. One had to admit. She was indeed compatible with Dmo Xian. The arrogant lady was shocked. She kept back the words that were about to come out of her mouth. The expression on her face also froze. Yiqing Luo tilted her head as she scoffed softly, laughing lightly with some hints of ridicule. Then, how are you so sure that the person you saw is Ah Xian? Last night, her man had been on her bed. Not to mention her trust towards Dmo Xian. Just based on theory. Although her man's battle power was very strong after he turned into a beast. But last night, her man had tormented her till she fainted. How could he possibly have the energy to run over to Mu Qiulan's side, to have another night with her? Even if a beast was a beast. But he was still a human. The few ladies' expressions changed instantly as they exchanged glances and their voices started to float, even if we didn't see his face, but we also know that is the Overlord. At least we saw the overlord's side face and back view. Even if we didn't see it, but mysterious fairy and the overlord are on the same bed. Don't tell me he's mistaken. Your Majesty, last night you told us personally that you would definitely support Lady Empyrean Fairy. Listening to their conversation, Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased even tighter. She glanced sideways and bumped Dmo Xian's arm. Looks like someone is rather daring. Knowing that you're in the Earth realm, he still dares to impersonate you right under your nose. Are you surprised? He was right. Impersonate. Dmo Xian had always been by her side. Then, the Lord Dizun, who appeared on Mu Qiulan's side. It must be fake. Someone actually dared to impersonate Dmo Xian. Even if he had disguised himself to look like Dmo Xian. Wouldn't it be hard to imitate Dmo Xian's temperament? To be able to impersonate Dmo Xian and make Mu Qiulan trust him without a doubt. Who could it be? Impersonation. What do you mean? Madame D said that someone is impersonating His Majesty. In other words, the overlord who is related to the Empyrean Fairy of Shadowless City is a fake. No way. How could anyone dare to impersonate Dizun? Do you think it's that easy to impersonate Dizun? How could this be possible? Yiqing Luo's voice wasn't considered soft at all. Those big shots who were nearer heard it clearly. Chapter 3986. Impersonating Dmo Xian was a big deal. Especially when Dmo Xian was still in the Earth realm, to impersonate him. Was he trying to throw his life away? Of course, there were also many who doubted the authenticity of this statement. Furthermore, they felt that this was an excuse that Yiqing Luo was trying to salvage Dmo Xian's image. The spectators all had their own guesses and thoughts. Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian didn't bother about him. Yiqing Luo's eyes sunk slightly as she gazed deeply at Mu Qiulan for some time before opening her mouth. Shadowless City's mysterious young lady, can you confirm that the person who shared the same bed with you last night is the overlord? Mu Qiulan had an ugly expression on her face. She clenched her fists tightly and spat out a few words through gritted teeth. I'm not so bad that I would mistake someone for someone else. Everyone sucked in a cold breath. In other words, she had admitted that she had slept with the overlord last night. Understanding it was one thing. It was a completely different feeling to hear the person personally admit it. Mu Qiulan's infatuated gaze swept past Dmo Xian. Her body moved slightly. His slightly disheveled coat slid off his shoulders. Her fair shoulders and her neck, which was covered by her fine black hair, revealed a mottled scar. That was it was the mark left behind by a man. I also know that there's a scar on the back of Lord Dizun's waist. Mu Qiulan raised her neck as if she was showing off, exposing the marks on his body to Yiqing Luo. Moreover, her gaze was infatuated as she looked at Dmo Xian's body seductively. Defensive back. That was a rather private spot. The mysterious fairy of the Shadowless City was actually able to accurately pinpoint that location. Could it be? Everyone's vision immediately shot towards Yiqing Luo. But he saw Yiqing Luo's expression was still calm without any ripples of emotions, as though she totally didn't put Mu Qiulan's words to heart. She tilted her head, raised her eyes, and smiled wickedly. Everyone held their breaths as they waited anxiously for Yiqing Luo's reply. Was it an admission? Or deny it? Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Yiqing Luo's pink lips parted slightly as she spat out a word, "Oh. Oh." What kind of answer was that? Also, now that he was her backer, he might be having an affair with another woman. How could she still smile so calmly? For a moment, the crowd really couldn't see through what Yiqing Luo was thinking. He also could not figure out whether Mu Qiulan's words were true or not. Mu Qiulan's flaunting expression also froze on her face. There was a sense of powerlessness, as if he was punching cotton. There was also a sense of inferiority that came from being looked down upon. Yes, inferiority complex. She was from a prestigious family and had a close relationship with the Dizun. She had a distinguished status. Standing in front of Yi Qing Luo, he should be full of confidence. However, she had a sense of inferiority that even she could not control. From Yi Qing Luo, she could feel. Yi Qing Luo totally disregarded her. Everything she had done was like a clown jumping on a beam. Everyone's different gazes were still on Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo continued, "Since you are sure that you have an affair with the overlord, then I can only fulfill your wish." Everyone. What kind of development was this? Why couldn't their brains keep up? Was Lady Emperor planning to accept the Empyrean Fairy of Shadowless City? Was he going to make the Empyrean Fairy of Shadowless City a concubine of the overlord? Since when did Madame D become so easy to talk to? Not only were the crowd filled with puzzlement. Chapter 3987. Fulfill her wish. Fulfill Mu Chulan's wish. Was this the Yi Qing Luo they knew? Absolutely not. The Yi Qing Luo they knew, if they ascertained that what Mu Chulan said was the truth. She would definitely chop this pair of adulterous couple into pieces with a single slash. How could she possibly fulfill her wish with a smile? Looking at Yi Qing Luo's devilish smile, Pei Xing and the rest all started to shiver. So scary, so scary. A smiling All Luo was really scary. Mu Chulan apparently hadn't understood the meaning behind Yi Qing Luo's words. After Missy reminded her softly, she looked at Yi Qing Luo suspiciously. She didn't feel that Yi Qing Luo would be so kind-hearted. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled as her narrow eyes squinted. The expression on her face was extremely indifferent, not looking like she was joking or angry. Why? Not willing. She raised her brows as she asked with a smile. Mu Chulan's eyes changed. It wasn't that she didn't agree, but she couldn't believe Yi Qing Luo's generosity. Yi Qing Luo's smile remained unchanged as she stretched out her hand and hooked onto Dmo Xian's arm as her voice was extremely clear. "Since you're not willing, I won't force you." Immediately, she pulled Dmo Xian as she turned around and left. "No. No." Mu Chulan cried out anxiously. She was in a hurry to speak out and chase after them. She had just stood up. It affected the internal injury which was caused by Dmo Xian earlier as she spat out a large mouthful of blood. Mu Chulan choked on the blood as she kept coughing. Her white robe was splattered all over. She was in a sorry state and dirty. Mu Chulan was so angry that her face turned red. In front of her beloved man, she revealed such an unbearable scene. As though her own perfect image had been completely shattered. This was Yi Qing Luo's motive. Intentionally pretending to be generous to fulfill her wish. Making her think that this was a plot. From then to openly express that this was an opportunity for her, Mu Chulan to reject it herself. Thinking of using this method to chase her away from the overlord. Don't even think about it. Mu Chulan tried her best to calm her twisted expression as she gritted her teeth in anger. "I'm willing. As long as I can be with His Majesty, I'm willing to be a servant." TSK. Yi Qing Luo clicked her tongue. "It's really touching. The high and mighty mysterious maiden of Shadowless City is willing to be a servant. I wonder if Linglong Palace will regret nurturing you." Mu Chulan was half kneeling on the ground, panting heavily. And Yi Qing Luo stood in front of her. When he said this, his attitude was so high and mighty. His words were particularly ear-piercing. Mu Chulan's eyes were bloodshot, but when she saw Dmo Xian by the side, she bit her lower lip hard, suppressing the surging anger in her chest. "My feelings for the overlord. I can give up everything, including my current position. Yiqing Luo clicked her tongue again, so touching. She paused for a moment. Then, the corners of her mouth twitched into a smile. Her long and narrow eyes rippled slightly. You, go back first. Go back. Mu Qiulan was stunned. Could it be that she wasn't going to be brought to the Qiao Manor to be with the Lord Overlord? Are you intending to use this image to follow us? Yiqing Luo's ridiculing gaze swept across Mu Qiulan from head to toe, her face filled with smiles. Mu Qiulan's face turned red. I know. Looking at the few young ladies supporting Mu Qiulan as they left the treasure gathering. The surrounding crowd had yet to regain their senses. Chapter 3988. Yiqing Luo tilted her head and took a look at Dmo Xian. Her smile didn't diminish. What else can I do? Are you really going to kill her? Wasn't it said that the person with the Empyrean Maiden of Shadowless City was an impostor? Pei Xing was also very puzzled. Yiqing Luo's slender fingers stroked her chin as her eyes were filled with smiles. But where's the evidence? Pei Xing choked. He opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. Yeah, where's the evidence? Without any evidence, he insisted that the Lord Overlord Mu Qiulan had seen was an impostor. Who would believe that? But, did he really have to admit that the woman was Lord Dizun's woman? Pei Xing and the rest couldn't believe it. The Overlord who treated Yiqing Luo so well, so gentle, no matter how one looked at it, would be with another woman. Moreover, this morning, Yiqing Luo and the Overlord had obviously arrived at the treasure-gathering place together. This meant that the Overlord was by Yiqing Luo's side last night. Pei Xing panicked. Overlord, aren't you going to explain this to all Luo? Dmo Xian's eyes were tranquil and there was not the slightest trace of emotion on his indifferent handsome face. There wasn't any ripple in his eyes as he faintly glanced at Pei Xing, and following that, his vision returned back to Yiqing Luo. He had no intention of answering Pei Xing. Yiqing Luo still had her arms crossed over her chest with a smile on her face. From the corner of his eyes, he seemed to have seen something. The smile at the corner of his mouth had a deeper meaning to it. Her slender fingers, bit by bit, stroked Dmo Xian's back. Finally, it landed somewhere behind his waist. There is indeed a scar on the back of his waist. This scar. She did. It had been a long time. Yiqing Luo had never asked about the origin of this scar. After all, they were legendary figures that everyone talked about. To climb to his current position, the effort he had put in was not something an ordinary person could imagine. It was normal to have wounds of various sizes on one's body. The young girl's casual words made the surrounding people gasp in disbelief. Pei Xing and the others were stunned as well. There was indeed a scar on the back of the Overlord's waist. In other words, Mu Qiulan was right. In other words, was Mu Qiulan's words true? Did the Overlord really betray all Luo? All Luo? Pei Xing frowned. He still wanted to say something, but Gu Zixi grabbed his arm. Gu Zixi shook her head at Pei Xing, signaling him to stop talking. Pei Xing's mouth was wide open, and then he slowly closed it. Looking at the two people in front of him, one was indifferent, the other was smiling like a flower, but his entire body was cold. It felt like the eunuchs were anxious when the emperor wasn't. He really couldn't figure out what Yiqing Luo was thinking about. Looking at the shocked and worried looks on the faces of the people in front of him, Zhang Xian frowned. Yiqing Luo laughed. Don't mind it too much. If Mu Qiulan really wants to become Overlord's woman in the open, it won't be that easy. Her words had a hidden meaning. However, Pei Xing and the rest could not understand the deeper meaning behind her words. Although you all plan to go to the Earth realm, everything in this treasure trove, as well as this land, are filled with memories. Yiqing Luo didn't continue talking about Mu Qiulan's thoughts but changed the topic. Tidy up the treasure gathering then. Go look for Shadowless City's mysterious young lady and ask for whatever compensation you deserve. Chapter 3989. Under Gu Zixi hint. Pei Xing didn't say anything in the end. He listened to Yi Qing Luo's words and went to clean up the hall, which was smashed by Mu Qiulan and the rest. But his mood was obviously gloomy. From time to time, he would look at Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian. Such a thing had happened. Pei Xing wasn't in the mood to leave for the heaven realm immediately. Yi Qing Luo took a look at the crowd and didn't say a word as she turned and left the place. Dmo Xian chased after her. The moment the two left, the entire place was in an uproar. All kinds of discussions were heard. When the person involved was still around, they didn't dare to make a sound. The gossip and doubts accumulated in the bottom of their hearts could finally be vented at this time. In just a moment's time, almost the entire without embroiling city already knew about this matter. Moreover, most of them guessed that Mu Qiulan's words might be true. After all, didn't Madame D personally admit that there was indeed a scar on the back of the overlord's waist? Yi Qing Luo returned to the Qiao residence at lightning speed. Just as she entered the courtyard, her delicate body was hooked by Dmo Xian's long arm. She was forcefully pressed into the man's arms. Dmo Xian's low and hoarse voice rang in her ear. Are you really angry? Do I look angry? Yi Qing Luo didn't struggle as she leaned into the man's arms and raised her head slightly. The man at this time, in front of outsiders, that indifferent and noble aura had been completely restrained. Lowering his head, his dark deep eyes met with the young lady's gaze. That face was so handsome that it made people fascinated. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes moved as her lips rose. Why? Are you feeling guilty? Using the handsome man trick? Dmo Xian leaned his face closer. I only used the handsome man trick on you. Yi Qing Luo snorted as she raised her hand and pinched his face. The young lady's angry look made Dmo Xian couldn't help but laugh. He hugged the young lady tightly and rested his head on her shoulder. I know you feel uncomfortable. I will investigate this matter clearly. So what if you investigate clearly? I'm already green with envy. Yi Qing Luo snorted coldly. Her tone seemed to be angry, but she had no intention of breaking free from the man's embrace. Who knows which day, I will catch you in bed. Only you will be on my bed. Dmo Xian hugged her tightly. He knew that her anger was not because he really had anything to do with Mu Qiulan. There were some things that didn't need to be explained. If Yi Qing Luo really believed Mu Qiulan's words. Otherwise, she wouldn't be standing in front of him so calmly and talking so much with Mu Qiulan. But, this kind of thing. Even if he believed it, they would also feel uncomfortable in their hearts. No one would wish for their beloved to have inexplicable rumors and slanders with others. Be good, it's my fault. It's my fault. I gave someone a chance to impersonate me and made little Luo, unhappy. Dmo Xian bent down and kissed her lips. He looked at her with his deep eyes. His voice was exceptionally deep. In order to make amends, before the truth comes to light, I'll agree to any of your requests, okay? Yi Qing Luo's slender brows suddenly rose, her eyes filled with a complacent expression. However, he pretended to be serious. Humph. Whatever I say, that's what it is. Yes, yes, yes. Dmo Xian coaxed in a soft voice. Yi Qing Luo nodded her head satisfactorily and put on a generous look, but since you've raised this request so sincerely, I can only be merciful and satisfy you. Chapter 3990. Dmo Xian's attitude softened. Can we change to another one? No. Yi Qing Luo raised her head arrogantly. Didn't you say that you will agree to any of my requests? You're going back on your words now. Dmo Xian put on a pitiful expression. Can't we discuss this further? No. Yi Qing Luo replied decisively. Dmo Xian sighed helplessly as he leaned his head back onto her neck and sighed softly, in order to make Lil Luo, happy. I can only wrong my little Xian Xian. Little Xian Xian. This form of address made Yi Qing Luo's goosebumps rose. She shook herself as she raised her hand and hammered his chest. These few days, she had been tormented badly by Dmo Xian. In this short period of time, she absolutely could not let Dmo Xian torment her again. If this carried on, she would be spoiled sooner or later. Who asked him to propose to agree to any of her requests unconditionally? This opportunity must not be missed. She must stop Dmo Xian from acting like a beast again. Dmo Xian laid on her shoulder as he saw the gleam in the young lady's eyes and that complacent look. His thin lips curled upwards as his gaze was gentle and filled with pampering. He naturally knew what Yi Qing Luo was thinking about. Originally, he didn't intend to torment her for this period of time. After all, these few days, he had indeed tormented her badly. Dmo Xian laughed lightly as he leaned close to her lips and gave it a light peck. This made the young lady grumble and pouted coquettishly as she pushed him, muttering, "Didn't I say not to touch me? This kind of action is also prohibited." Dmo Xian only laughed. His deep laughter was right beside her ear. It was very magnetic. "Tonight, let's go catch the traitor together." Yi Qing Luo was stunned as she raised her head to look at him. She seemed to be astonished that he knew what she was thinking about. Dmo Xian pinched her nose. "Earlier at the gathering of treasures, you and that young lady, as well as what you said after that, isn't it to prepare for tonight?" Yi Qing Luo was astonished. In front of Dmo Xian, she really had no secrets at all. He indeed wasn't wrong. At the gathering of treasures, what she said to Mu Qiulan, and after that, she intentionally admitted that Dmo Xian had a scar on his back, as though she believed Mu Qiulan's words. Actually, it was to lure the snake out. Tonight, he would take His Majesty to catch His Majesty's traitor. Night. At mealtime. It was rare for Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian to appear in Patriarch Qiao's banquet. There were also about 7 or 8 big shots from other forces around. When they saw Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian appearing, their expressions were all different. The entire dining atmosphere was very strange. Yi Qing Luo's mood was obviously not high, and when she faced Dmo Xian, her attitude wasn't very good. On the other hand, Dmo Xian would occasionally help Yi Qing Luo to prepare the dishes and whisper from time to time. But Yi Qing Luo had brushed them off in public. In the second half of the court, Dmo Xian flicked his sleeves and left. Patriarch Qiao was stunned. The big shots at the side did not dare to speak. Everyone could see that this couple was still throwing a tantrum because of Mu Qiulan's matter. Patriarch Qiao looked at the direction where Dmo Xian left as he suppressed his voice, trying to persuade Yi Qing Luo, "Madam Emperor, the overlord he. Don't bother about him, do whatever you like." Yi Qing Luo waved her hand as if she didn't mind, but her expression was obviously not good. After eating a few more chopsticks, she stood up and bade farewell to Patriarch Qiao and the other big shots, leaving the main hall. Chapter 3991. It seemed that Mu Qiulan's matter had a great impact on the overlord and the overlord's wife. She had humiliated them in public. Could it be, was the overlord's wife about to lose favor? Everyone had all kinds of speculations. But no one took the initiative to mention or discuss this matter. After all, the final outcome was still uncertain. If the overlord's wife did not lose favor in the end, if they discussed behind her back now, it was very likely to annoy the overlord's wife. And the two who had quarreled. At this time, they were squatting on the eaves of a secret room in an inn. Their figures overlapped and disappeared in the darkness. And in that inn, a few young ladies were taking care of Mucheon, who was lying on the bed. The ground was a mess. Obviously, Mucheon had just lost her temper not long ago. Her body was wrapped in several layers of bandages. The young ladies were applying medicine beside her. Everyone did not know how to take care of others. Her move. Mucheon was in so much pain that she kept gasping. Unable to bear it, she slapped the young lady in front of her. "You can't even do a small thing. What's the use of you?" The young lady was slapped to the ground, her face swollen. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she did not dare to refute, and cried softly. This sobbing made Mucheon even more irritated, and her face was hideous and twisted. At this time, a figure hurriedly trotted over. It was the arrogant young lady, her face full of excitement and pride. "Lady Mystic Fairy, I heard another thing. I guarantee it will make you happy." "Speak," Mucheon said sternly. The arrogant young lady was not afraid of Mucheon's expression. She moved closer to the bed and said excitedly, "I heard just now that the Overlord and that bitch had a quarrel. That bitch really thought that the Overlord doted on her to the core, so she threw the Overlord's face in public, making the Overlord so angry that he threw her away and left." Mucheon's hideous expression was smoothed little by little. There was a look of joy in the bottom of her eyes. "Really? It's absolutely true. It's something that happened not too long ago. It was spread by the servants of the Chiao Manor, and there were many leaders of the various powers present. It's definitely not fake." Mucheon sat up straight on the bed excitedly with a proud smile on her face. "Ha! Ha ha ha! I knew it. I'm the only one Lord Dizun loves. That's right. Which man would like such a rude and overbearing woman? She even dared to humiliate Dizun in front of everyone. Who gave her the confidence? Ha, how can that slut compare to Our Lady Mystic Fairy?" Arrogant barbaric woman flattered. The other young misses also began to compliment him. Mucheon was overjoyed. The house was so excited that no one noticed that there were already 2 people squatting on the eaves. Chapter 3992. Yiqing Luo felt that Dmo Xian wanted to pamper her into a willful little princess. In this way, no one would fight with him for her in future. That was definitely the case. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and was about to pinch the man's eye. But it was held by the man's large palm. A low and hoarse voice entered her ears, "Coming. Coming." Yiqing Luo stopped messing around as she turned sideways and looked into the room. As expected, she saw a figure dressed in a purple robe with an outstanding figure appearing out of thin air in the room. When the few young ladies saw that figure, they were so shocked that they knelt down. Their gazes towards that figure were filled with reverence and excitement. Mucheon, who was on the bed, also looked at that person agitatedly. "The Overlord." Mucheon was extremely agitated. Overlord came to look for her after abandoning Yiqing Luo. Did it mean that she was more important than Yiqing Luo? She was about to become the real Madame D. Mucheon struggled to climb up from the bed. That purple figure's sleeves moved and an invisible profound wave locked onto Mucheon's movements. A cold voice rang in the room and it was extremely dignified, "Lie down properly." Just these 2 words made Yiqing Luo's pupils contracted. She glanced sideways, exchanging glances with Dmo Xian. From their angle, they couldn't see that person's face. But from that back view and that voice, it was exactly the same as Dmo Xian. If it wasn't for Dmo Xian who was by her side. When Yiqing Luo heard that voice, she would really treat that person as Dmo Xian. Although they were shocked, but there wasn't much fluctuation in their emotions. Previously there was only Mucheon and the few of them. The two of them were fooling around, totally not worried that Mu Qiulan would discover them. But this person who impersonated Dmo Xian was different. Currently there was no way to know the other party's ability. It was better to hide himself as much as possible. In the room, that purple figure walked slowly to the bed and looked at the person on the bed as his voice was deep. I've made you suffer. Not at all, not at all. Mu Qiulan was so agitated that her eyes turned red as she sat up straight and shook her head vigorously. As long as I can be with Overlord, Lan doesn't suffer at all. Overlord raised his hand and caressed Mu Qiulan's head. Mu Qiulan became even more excited. His eyes were filled with joy and excitement. Dizun sat on the bed and said, "Take good care of yourself." Mu Qiulan slowly leaned into the arms of Lord Overlord and said in a soft voice, "It's all my fault. I've made Lord Overlord worry." She raised her head and looked at the face of Lord Dizun. That moved her heart. Her eyes were filled with infatuation. Why did Lord Dizun come to see me? If Madame D finds out, she'll be mad at Dizun. His Majesty's mood seemed to have sunk. This caused Mu Qiulan to shrink back slightly. Dizun sneered, "I am the Dizun, why can't I have other women by my side?" She threw this sovereign's face in front of everyone. Could it be that this sovereign should continue to coax her? As soon as he finished speaking, he restrained his emotions. He pinched Mu Qiulan's chin with one hand and said, "It's still an obedient girl like Lan, who can win my heart more." Lord Dizun. Mu Qiulan said shyly as she slowly closed her eyes. Dizun lowered his head and kissed her lips. He totally didn't care that there were other young ladies in the room. These young ladies naturally weren't people who didn't know how to behave. Each of them blushed as they left the room quietly. Chapter 3993. Even though he knew that the person in the room was an imposter. But looking at that person, using Dmo Xian's image and the voice that Dmo Xian spoke to tease other girls, he still felt very uncomfortable. He wanted to go berserk. If he wanted to flirt with a beauty, he should use his status to do so. What was the point of impersonating Dmo Xian? Yiqing Luo's mania, how could the man who was sticking close to her not feel it? His long arms wrapped around the young girl, his warm kisses fell on her skin, soothing her restless heart. The man's elegant sandalwood fragrance seeped into her nose. His broad chest was extremely warm. It also suppressed the irritation in Yiqing Luo's heart. But this is only temporary. Because the warmth in the room continued. It had already developed to the point where Mu Qiulan's shirt was half off and she was lying on the bed. As for the Lord Dizun, he leaned forward. Yiqing Luo, holy shit. Since he was impersonating Dmo Xian, and even knew about the quarrel between her and Dmo Xian in the Qiao residence, then he should also know that Mu Qiulan had been severely injured by Dmo Xian during the day. Now, it was like this. Wasn't he afraid that Mu Qiulan's body wouldn't be able to endure it? Wasn't he afraid that Mu Qiulan would die in bed? Especially, how could she tolerate it when she was wearing a Xian's face? Damn it. The person in his arms became more and more agitated. Dmo Xian also expressed his helplessness. But when he looked at Yiqing Luo, his gaze was filled with tenderness. It was precisely because he cared that he cared. Even though he knew it was fake. But he still couldn't restrain himself. All of a sudden, the overlord, who was leaning on Mu Qiulan, was about to take off her blouse. His back suddenly stiffened as a gush of penetrating awe-inspiring might struck towards Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian's direction. Overlord abruptly got up from the bed, not bothering about the disheveled Mu Qiulan as he turned his head around. His gaze was as cold as ice, shooting directly towards Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian's direction. Who's there? He had been discovered. Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian exchanged glances. He instantly understood what the other party was thinking. Immediately after, Dmo Xian raised his hand and blocked the incoming airwave. Yiqing Luo followed closely from his embrace, and with a leap, she slowly landed into the house. Yiqing Luo. Mu Qiulan, who was a little flustered and wanted to cover herself with a blanket when the Lord Overlord suddenly left, was stunned when she saw who it was. Yiqing Luo's expression didn't change as her lips curled into a slight smile. His eyes were calm and indifferent, staring straight at His Majesty. This face was exactly the same as Dmo Xian's. Even their auras were exactly the same. He had a peerless face, shimmering peach blossom eyes, deep and cold. His purple robe made him look majestic and imposing. Chapter 3994. The Overlord had left her behind. Specially came to the inn to look for her. She was the real winner. Mu Qiulan no longer concealed herself as she openly revealed her messy and half-exposed petite body as she stretched out her hand to pull the Overlord, while giving Yiqing Luo a warning look. Yiqing Luo, you're following the Overlord. Overlord was pulled by Mu Qiulan just like that. But his vision was still fixed on Yiqing Luo. Not knowing why. This kind of gaze made Yiqing Luo felt that she had seen it somewhere before. But this face, which was exactly the same as Dmo Xian, made her unable to recall when she had seen this pair of eyes. Mu Qiulan saw that her words had totally not incited the anger of the Overlord, and her heart was filled with unwillingness as she forced herself to walk down from the bed. Her soft as though she had no bones as she laid on the back of the Overlord. Her arms encircled his waist as she stuck her head out and looked at Yiqing Luo complacently as her eyes were filled with ridicule. Yiqing Luo, can you still have some face? Throwing the Overlord's face in front of everyone, and now you're even following him. Have you ever treated the Overlord as your husband? Her words paused slightly as Mu Qiulan's ridicule became even thicker. This kind of behavior of yours is really shameful. A lady should have some self-respect. This sentence was said by others to help Yiqing Luo to humiliate her. Mu Qiulan had now returned it to Yiqing Luo untouched. After she finished saying this sentence, she felt extremely carefree. But, no matter how she provoked or how she attacked with words, the expression on the young girl's face was as calm as a billow of waves. Even her gaze didn't change at all. The smile on the corners of her lips was filled with ridicule. Instead, it seemed like it was ridiculing her flaunting. Mu Qiulan's expression instantly turned extremely ugly. Her own flaunting words were like a punch on cotton. That kind of powerless feeling made her feel extremely uncomfortable. The crux was, His Majesty also ignored her completely, allowing her to perform a one-man show. His vision had always been fixed on Yiqing Luo. This went on for several breaths' time. The silent Yiqing Luo's expression finally had some changes. Her slender brows rose slightly. Her charming eyes were filled with probing and deep meaning. Her pink lips moved slightly as she said word by word, who exactly are you? Di Zun did not answer. When Mu Qiulan heard this question, her heart skipped a beat. Her arms were tightly wrapped around the waist of the Overlord, as she spoke in a slightly sharp tone. Yiqing Luo, what do you mean by this? He is the Overlord. Yiqing Luo didn't even bother to take a look at Mu Qiulan as she continued asking, answer, who are you? Yiqing Luo, what do you mean? There are no outsiders here, and you still want to slander His Majesty? Mu Qiulan raised her head and looked at the handsome face of His Majesty. This face, this aura. It must be the Overlord himself. Yiqing Luo was just bluffing. With this thought in mind, Mu Qiulan's heart calmed down a little. It was at this moment. Overlord met Yiqing Luo's gaze as his thin lips moved slightly in a deep sexy voice which was exactly the same as Dmo Xian's rang, Lil Luo, Who do you think I am? That voice and that tone. It was totally Dmo Xian's taste. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased tightly as she heard the three words, Lil Luo, coming out from the impostor's mouth. She felt especially strange. Chapter 3995. Lil Luo, since you found out, I might as well. Stop pretending. The corners of Di Zun's mouth curled up into a casual smile. I'm really tired of facing you all the time. I'm the overlord, it's normal for me to have a few ladies by my side. He grabbed the woman hanging behind him and hooked her onto his arm. He could even boldly stretch out his large palm and grab the girl's chest. Ah! Mu Qiulan moaned in ecstasy as she spoke in a soft tone, Overlord, you're hurting Lan, Overlord's eyes were filled with a playful smile as his vision was still fixed on Yi Qing Luo. I do like you, if you know your place and stay by my side, the position of Madame D will still be yours. Overlord stretched out his hand to pinch Mu Qiulan's breasts. Yi Qing Luo's pupils contracted. She heard his arrogant words again. The expression on her face turned colder and colder. Even though the person in front of her looked exactly the same as Dmo Xian. But Yi Qing Luo was still able to differentiate the difference between the two. The person in front of her gave her an extremely strange feeling. A kind of indescribable strange feeling. Overlord noticed the change in Yi Qing Luo's eyes as a strange glint flashed past his deep eyes. Suddenly, his long arm hooked. Mu Qiulan, who was in his arms, was pushed to the side of the bed. He lowered his head and was about to kiss her deeply. Wait! Yi Qing Luo's eyes flashed sharply as she raised her hand and grabbed Overlord's shoulder. Forcefully separated the two of them. Mu Qiulan's eyes were still closed, waiting for Overlord's kiss. If Overlord kissed her right in front of Yi Qing Luo, this was enough to anger Yi Qing Luo to death. But the beautiful scene had yet to take shape. It was forcefully destroyed by Yi Qing Luo. Overlord wasn't annoyed but looked at Yi Qing Luo with a smile which didn't look like a smile. His narrow peach blossom eyes were filled with smiles. Why? Didn't you not recognize me? Why stop me from being intimate with other ladies? Yi Qing Luo's eyes flashed. This attitude, this tone. He had really imitated Dmo Xian to the point of perfection. She was a little dazed. Overlord. Mu Qiulan said coquettishly, you promised Lan that you would seek justice for Lan. You destroyed the jade pendant you gave me for her, and now you're treating Lan like this. Lan won't listen to you. How could Mu Qiulan possibly let the Overlord's attention be placed on Yi Qing Luo as she immediately hugged the Overlord and started acting coquettishly. Di Zun caressed Mu Qiulan's face. I will give you another jade pendant. Be good. A hint of surprise flashed across Mu Qiulan's eyes, and she quickly nodded obediently. You're right, Lord Di Zun. Lady Di Zun will be Lan's elder sister in the future. Lan shouldn't dominate Lord Di Zun in front of my elder sister. It was as if he was saying, I'm very obedient, I won't mess around, and I won't be jealous. She even smiled at Yi Qing Luo and asked, am I right, sister? Yi Qing Luo. Blarg. These two words made her want to puke. Okay. Who was her elder sister or younger sister? Yi Qing Luo couldn't even be bothered to look at Mu Qiulan from the corner of her eyes. She only stared at the face which was exactly the same as Dmo Xian's. Xian wouldn't use this kind of attitude to talk to me. I don't believe that you're Xian. Her voice was very calm, without any excess emotions. Chapter 3996. Yi Qing Luo laughed lightly. Her eyes were calm and the smile on her lips added a deeper meaning. I'm not disappointed, after all. No matter what Xian becomes, the person he loves the most in his heart will only be me, isn't that so? Overlord's deep eyes flickered slightly. The dark light disappeared in a flash, so fast that one couldn't catch it. Immediately after, his thin lips rose as he raised his slender fingers, gently caressing his lips. That's right, after all. Only you are worthy of this overlord. The gaze he shot towards Yi Qing Luo was filled with a possessive yearning. His scorching gaze seemed as though it was going to burn Yi Qing Luo. This overlord said, "As long as you listen obediently, the position of Imperial Palace's mistress will only be reserved for you." Overlord pulled Mu Qiulan into his arms, as his cold thin lips pasted onto Mu Qiulan's neck. One hand moved randomly on Mu Qiulan's body. So, when this overlord dotes on other ladies. As this overlord's Imperial Palace's mistress, what should you do, Lil Luo? Understand right. Although he could do whatever he wanted on Mu Qiulan's body. But that pair of deep eyes was still fixated on Yi Qing Luo. As though he wasn't willing to miss any expression on her face. But the young lady was still holding that smile, as she looked at him calmly. In her eyes, there wasn't a single bit of anger. Overlord's eyes sunk a little. Could it be that she didn't believe that he was Dmo Xian? But if she didn't believe it, why would she not be able to control herself earlier, pulling him and Mu Qiulan apart? For a moment, Overlord couldn't figure out what Yi Qing Luo was thinking. The hand which was placed on Mu Qiulan's body also paused slightly. N. Overlord, don't stop, N. Mu Qiulan's amorous heart was stirred up, as her petite body wriggled, grabbing Overlord's hand and pressing it on her body. Overlord allowed Mu Qiulan to do whatever she wanted, as his gaze was fixed on Yi Qing Luo. As he increased his tone, Lil Luo, why are you still standing here for? Don't tell me. You want to join in. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips rose slightly, her absolutely gorgeous face and the corners of her eyes were like poppies blooming, exceptionally flirtatious. That smile made the pupils of the venerable Dizun shrink. She said indifferently, "You can let me leave, but haven't you forgotten something?" The overlord narrowed his eyes. What? Yi Qing Luo replied, "After destroying that piece of jade pendant, you promised me that you will give me a piece of jade pendant which is even more precious than that jade pendant." She paused for a moment and cast a sidelong glance at Mu Qiulan, who was in a daze, with a faint smile on her face. "You also promised me that you wouldn't give your jade pendant to any woman other than me." His Majesty's eyes darkened. As expected, he was still doubting himself. Earlier, he had personally said that he would give Mu Qiulan another jade pendant. At this moment, Yi Qing Luo had caught hold of the topic. Lord Overlord released Mu Qiulan and waved away Mu Qiulan's hand that was still trying to pull him away. Then, he slowly straightened his body. His black hair cascaded down his shoulders. His messy purple robe revealed half of his fair chest muscles. His celestial bearing was outstanding, indeed very similar to Dmo Xian. He slowly walked towards Yi Qing Luo. His footsteps were light and slow. His purple robe fluttered without any wind. It made his imposing manner even more pressing. Until he stood in front of Yi Qing Luo. His thin lips curled into a smile, as he stretched out his hand towards Yi Qing Luo. Chapter 3997. Wearing Dmo Xian's face. This action was indeed very seductive. But Yi Qing Luo expressed that there was no fluctuation in her heart, she even wanted to laugh. Using her man's face to seduce him. Did she look like the kind of person who would be captivated by beauty? Since I have promised you, I will naturally do it. Overlord smiled seductively, the jade pendant that I promised you, I will personally send it to you tomorrow. As for her. Overlord took a look at Mu Qiulan, his expression indifferent. In order to make Lil Luo happy, I will reject her. After saying these words, Overlord stretched out his arms towards Yiqing Luo, wanting to pull her into his embrace, so Lil Luo is jealous. Just as he finished his words, a wave of pain came from the hand that stretched out. The young lady's slender fair hand clasped his arm. Her 5 fingers pinched hard without mercy. Overlord felt the pain, his brows creased slightly. Yiqing Luo took a step back, distancing herself from the lingering scent of Overlord. Her long and narrow eyes squinted slightly, her expression was playful as she smiled evilly. You've been tricked. Overlord was slightly stunned, his expression changed immediately. But his brows maintained the same emotions. What do you mean? Ah, Xian He has never mentioned anything to me regarding jade pendant. Yiqing Luo's eyes curved into crescents, as though she had lured him into a pit, not to mention giving me a better jade pendant, or promising me not to give other women jade pendant, because he had never given anyone jade pendant, so how could he possibly talk about the topic of jade pendant with me? You. Overlord's expression sunk, but immediately, he grinned. Madam is indeed smart. He slowly retracted his hand, rubbing his broken wrist. With a kacha sound, the bone was straightened. But on his face, there was no hint of pain. But, so what if Madam knows? Who will believe that I am an impostor? Overlord laughed evilly, his voice was deep, exceptionally alluring. Admitted. Yiqing Luo's brows didn't have any fluctuations. Then, who are you? Di Zun, she should be called the impostor now. She raised her eyebrows and smiled brilliantly. Madam, you're so smart. Why don't you guess who I am? His expression was relaxed. Even his words did not have the slightest hint of panic or humiliation from being exposed. Obviously, he had a backup plan and didn't care if he was recognized or not. The conversation between the two. This caused Mu Qilan, who was lying on the bed, to tense up abruptly. She abruptly sat up on the bed. What do you mean? He. Did she hear it wrong? She must be dreaming, right? How could the man she had been longing for not be the Overlord? That face, that voice. It was obviously His Majesty the Overlord. Mu Qilan's heart clenched as she bounced up from the bed and hugged the impostor's waist. Sir Di Zun, you're joking with her, right? How could you not be, not the Overlord? As she spoke, she reached out to touch the impostor's face. Before she could touch his face, she was flung away by the man with a flick of his sleeve. On his face, there was no longer the tenderness he had when he faced her earlier. Instead, it was filled with disgust and disdain. I'm not the Overlord, but I'm also your Shadowless City's mysterious young lady's man, the first man, isn't it? No. No, you're the Overlord, you must be the Overlord. Chapter 3998. What she relied on was because she had become the woman of the Overlord. It was because she could be together with the Overlord. She would give up everything. Even Linglong Palace Lord's virginity was given to the Overlord. Not only because she loved Dmo Xian. She also wanted to make use of Dmo Xian's power to raise her status even higher. But now, the other party told her. He wasn't the Overlord at all, he was an impostor. How could Mu Qilan accept this? Mu Qilan shook her head crazily, as though she had gone mad. You're lying to me, I'm dreaming, you must be the Overlord. The person whom the Overlord loves is me, it's me, Mu Qilan. You must be the Overlord. Mu Qilan had sunk into her own crazy world. Yiqing Luo only shot a glance and didn't bother much about it. Her vision was calm and indifferent as she looked at the face which was exactly the same as Dmo Xian. She smiled lightly, her pink lips rose into a slight arc. adding a sweet luster to her face. Even if she didn't wear any makeup, she was also a peerless beauty. Using this appearance, this identity, to deceive a woman's pure body and feelings, you must be very proud, right? Her voice was clear and pleasant to listen to, and her tone was very indifferent. The impostor's pupils contracted slightly, as her expression turned stiff. Yiqing Luo continued to smile. How envious are you of my Xian, that you turned yourself into Xian's appearance. Envious. These two words made the impostor's body become extremely stiff. His body tensed up, as his expression congealed, as his eyes stared intently at Yiqing Luo, as the surging emotion seemed to want to swallow Yiqing Luo. His gaze made one shudder with fear. But Yiqing Luo tilted her head, as she smiled sweetly. Why don't I ask in another way, you? How shameful are you, that you can only use someone else's identity to appear in front of others? Shut up. The impostor's fists clenched tightly, as a cold sharp glint flashed past her eyes, sharp and cold. You shut up. Yiqing Luo laughed lightly, and in her laughter, it was filled with ridicule. Since your self-esteem is so strong, why do you need to impersonate someone else? The impostor's body began to tremble at a speed visible to the naked eye. The emotions on his face were on the verge of collapse. His eyes were fixated on Yiqing Luo. His expression changed unpredictably. Yiqing Luo's eyelids rose as her eyes overflowed with some meaningful ridicule, preparing to strike while the iron was hot, to continue to destroy the other party's mental defenses. Suddenly, Mu Qilan's shrill cry tore through the sky. She threw herself at the impostor and hugged her tightly, repeating over and over again, "You must be the overlord, you're not an impostor. Tell me, you're not an impostor." Mu Qilan's mental state was obviously somewhat abnormal. His hands gripped the impostor's arm tightly. His eyes were filled with madness. However, it was also because of her sudden question and her madness that the impostor suddenly came back to her senses. Her expression became serious again. Damn it. Just a little more. Just a little more and the impostor would have revealed her identity. This Mu Qilan really couldn't be left alive. Yiqing Luo gritted her teeth as she stared angrily at Mu Qilan. This stare also fell into the impostor's eyes. The impostor's expression had already adjusted, as her lips curled into an evil smile. Her elegant posture, noble and elegant. Chapter 3999. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. I've already made it very clear that he will not treat me with such an attitude. The impostor sneered. How do you know that he's not putting on an act in front of you on purpose? Men's nature is so bad, do you think he will really guard you alone? I don't know if other men will guard someone but, my Xian, I trust him. Yiqing Luo replied without any hesitation. The impostor pursed his lips and in his deep eyes, a sliver of emotion which she couldn't understand flashed past. His mood seemed rather gloomy. He naturally knew how much Yiqing Luo trusted Dmo Xian. So much so that there was no condition and no reservation. He really didn't understand. Why did Yiqing Luo trust Dmo Xian so much? She had never doubted Dmo Xian even once. It was this unreserved trust. It made him want to tear this trust apart. But, no matter what he did, the trust between them was unbreakable. Why on earth? He didn't understand. Since you asked this question, I know that you've never loved anyone before. Yiqing Luo's eyes curved slightly as her smile was filled with some sympathy. Perhaps it was this sympathy which agitated the impostor. Or perhaps it was Yiqing Luo's words which agitated the impostor. The impostor's expression sunk as he pulled Mu Qilan who was hanging on his waist and with a move, he headed towards Yiqing Luo's face. His long arm hooked as he attempted to pull Yiqing Luo into his arms. The words which came out of his mouth were cold and ruthless. Really? You really trust each other that much? If I use this face, after I have you, will his trust towards you be half of yours? The impostor's eyes were filled with a bloodthirsty glint. This person, was he crazy? Yi-Ching Luo took a step back. She bumped into a broad embrace. The elegant sandalwood fragrance seeped into her nose. Yi-Ching Luo's eyes lit up as she looked behind her. A Xian. Dmo Xian hugged her slender body as he raised one hand and easily pressed down on the impostor in front of him. Between his brows, an icy cold smile surfaced. His eyes shot out a murderous intent. His entire body's profound chi was unleashed. The surrounding air rippled outward in a circle. The impostor was sent flying out of the room. The loud banging sound made the ladies who were staying in the guest rooms not far away rush out of their rooms. Then, he saw Lord Dizun lying on the ground pathetically, blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. Lord Dizun. The young ladies were extremely shocked. They immediately went forward and helped Lord Dizun up. His heart was filled with shock. Someone was actually able to injure His Majesty. What was going on? Then, he saw two figures walk out of the room whose door had been torn into pieces. Dizun. His gaze shifted to the Lord Dizun, who was being supported. What the hell? Two venerable emperors? What's going on? The young misses were dumbfounded. Stunned, he looked back and forth at the two venerable sovereigns, who looked exactly the same, in disbelief. It was exactly the same. Except for one who was in a sorry state. The other was noble and had an imposing aura. Where is the mystic fairy? The young misses were in a daze when they saw Mu Qiulan, who was sitting on the side of the bed with a despondent look as she mumbled to herself. The arrogant young miss immediately rushed into the room and put her hand on Mu Qiulan's shoulder as she asked, "What's going on? Why are there two venerable emperors?" Mu Qiulan raised his head as his eyes were scarlet red. Chapter 4000. Two overlords. There must be one who was real and one who was fake. And in front of them, these two overlords, which one was the real one and which one was fake? Looking at Mu Qiulan's expression, they had roughly guessed it. All of them turned their gazes towards the impostor who they were supporting earlier. The few young ladies were so shocked that they immediately let go of the impostor as they retreated a few steps. The impostor staggered for a moment and finally managed to regain his balance as he stared coldly at Dmo Xian and Yi-Ching Luo. He pressed his chest as he suppressed the surging pain in his body. That strike from Dmo Xian earlier. His 5 viscera and 6 bowels were almost shattered. Luckily he had evaded quickly and didn't hurt his core. No wonder. Yi-Ching Luo didn't hesitate to suspect that he was a fake and set a trap to lure him to admit that he was a fake. The real Dmo Xian had always been with her. How could she possibly believe this impostor? Yi-Ching Luo slowly walked towards the impostor as her lips curled upwards, curling into a brilliant smile. "Who are you?" The impostor took a few steps back as his thin lips pursed slightly as his gaze turned slightly chilly. Just as he was about to open his mouth, suddenly he heard messy footsteps coming from not too far away. Following that, a few people walked over in quick steps. What was that sound earlier? What's going on? Seems like someone is fighting. Are they going to tear down the inn? Let's go take a look. The sound of the door breaking had attracted the attention of the guests staying in the inn. It also attracted the attention of the inn's boss. Momentarily, around 7 to 8 people rushed in. The first person who entered their sights was a noble man dressed in a purple robe. Beside him was an alluring young lady dressed in a red robe. The two of them stood there like an ink painting. Everyone's expression changed as they spoke in a trembling voice. "D. Overlord. Madam Emperor. The one who stayed here was Shadowless City's mysterious maiden. Why would the Overlord and Madam Emperor appear here? Could it be? Were they here to look for Shadowless City's mysterious maiden? Everyone's vision swiftly fell onto Mu Qiulan, who was squatting on the ground as though she had lost her entire world. Instantly, their minds started to imagine a drama. But this drama had just taken shape in his mind. Someone exclaimed, This is also His Excellency the Venerable Sovereign. What the hell? Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. They saw a figure standing in the middle of a few young ladies with his back facing them. He was dressed in the same way as Di Zun. He was tall and slender, looking very noble. The person who cried out in alarm was a guest who had just heard the commotion in the inn and rushed over. He happened to see two venerable sovereigns who looked exactly the same. When the man in purple turned around to look at them, they were so shocked that their jaws almost dropped to the ground. He was in a dumbfounded state. Di Zun. Is that Lord Di Zun over there too? How could there be two venerable sovereigns? Everyone looked to their left and right, and their expressions became extremely strange. The one beside the imperial madam is definitely the real Di Zun. Is there even a need to guess? Someone said with certainty. Everyone turned to look at Dmo Xian. They all expressed their agreement. Then, that fake Di Zun, what's going on? Why does he look so similar to His Majesty? The fake couldn't help but frown as she was stared at by everyone's strange gazes. She was wearing Dmo Xian's face. This frown was imposing without anger. A majestic aura came crashing down. Chapter 4001. This was really the fake overlord. Such a strong aura. The fake overlord could make them feel such a strong sense of oppression. Everyone's suspicious gazes shifted towards the man beside Yiqing Luo. They were silently comparing the both of them. Yiqing Luo naturally saw through everyone's thoughts. She raised her brows slightly as her long and narrow eyes rose. Such an obvious thing, do you still need to guess? She actually suspected that the man beside her was an imposter. No matter how strong that imposter's aura was, could it be as strong as her Axian? Yiqing Luo's words had admitted that the man beside her was the real overlord. Everyone naturally believed in Madame Di's words. One by one, they shifted their gazes towards the imposter. The moment the imposter heard Yiqing Luo's words, his eyes wavered as his deep eyes turned towards Yiqing Luo. In the depths of his eyes, there were traces of unknown emotions. His brows creased even tighter. He was silently pondering on what method he should use to leave this place first. Suddenly, a slender figure dashed over. In his arms, a ball of warmth fell into his arms. A lady's sharp and crazy voice was heard, "Where are your eyes? Don't you have any brains? If she says that imposter is the real one, then it's the real one." The person who dashed out was Mu Qiulan. Her arms hugged the imposter tightly as she had yet to tidy up her messy clothes. Her shoulder was half exposed and the fair skin on her neck was filled with sporadic marks. Everyone could see that. What was she doing earlier? A sliver of disgust flashed past the imposter's eyes as he stretched out his hand to push Mu Qiulan away. But Mu Qiulan hugged him even tighter. The lady's suppressed threatening voice was heard, "Since you're impersonating the overlord, you must have your own motive, right? Don't tell me you want to admit defeat like this." The imposter's body stiffened slightly. Mu Qiulan took a look at the imposter as she loosened her grip on him and held his arm as she spoke righteously to the crowd, "The person beside me is the real overlord." Everyone, what on earth was going on? The commotion was getting bigger and bigger. More and more people were attracted over. Some people had heard that two venerable sovereigns had appeared here, so they had come all the way here to find out what was going on. Mu Qiulan's face was filled with anger as she pointed at Yi Qing Luo and complained, "This jealous woman, because she was jealous of me, she intentionally found someone to impersonate the overlord, trying to ruin my reputation. She also wants to force the overlord to return to her side." The more she spoke, the angrier she became. Her chest was heaving up and down in anger. When I heard her mention something about impersonating or not, I felt that something was wrong. As expected. She actually wanted to use such a method to destroy me. Destroy Lord Dizun. You're so cruel. What? Did Madame D find someone to impersonate Dizun? Based on what the Empyrean Fairy of Shadowless City is saying, that the Lady Monarch wants everyone to think that the Lord Overlord that the Empyrean Fairy mentioned is actually a fake, so that the relationship between the Empyrean Fairy and the Lord Overlord is clear. If that's the case, the Empyrean Fairy's reputation will be ruined. However, we can't be sure that what the mysterious Lady of Shadowless City said is true. Someone else raised a different opinion. Everyone discussed spiritedly, and there were many different opinions. Whereas the person involved didn't say a single word. Mu Qiulan hugged the impostor's arm tightly as she lowered her head slightly, as her lips curled into a sneer which no one could see. Her eyes were filled with scarlet madness. Chapter 4002. Anyway, this impostor was exactly the same as the overlord. As long as the impostor cooperated, then he would become the real overlord. And that real overlord was the fake one. By then, everyone would know that she, Mu Qiulan, was the overlord's woman, the future imperial madam. The impostor was only slightly stunned as she understood Mu Qiulan's thinking. He squinted his peach blossom eyes as his peripheral vision swept past Yi Qing Luo. After seeing that smirk of ridicule on her lips, his pupils flashed slightly. Immediately after, his long arm moved and hooked Mu Qiulan into his arms. The expression on his face was filled with nobility and laziness. His half-squinted peach blossom eyes reflected a sharp and dignified aura. He slowly curled his thin lips as he imitated Dmo Xian's temperament to perfection. Lon is too mischievous. Since Lil Luo wants to use this method to punish me, then let her torment me. His cold and deep voice carried a hint of indifference. Mu Qiulan was stunned for a moment. When the crowd heard this, they looked at Yi Qing Luo in astonishment and then looked at the impostor. This tone, this expression, it totally belonged to the overlord. It felt that Shadowless City's mysterious maiden's accusation was very credible. Overlord Lon Er's reputation can be ruined, but Lon Er absolutely cannot bear to see the overlord being doubted. Mu Qiulan looked at the impostor affectionately. Following that, her expression changed into a solemn one as she stared angrily at Yi Qing Luo, reprimanding her with righteous indignation. "Imperial Madam, since you've already decided to let me and Imperial Madam be together, why do you need to play such tricks behind my back? By doing this, you're simply creating trouble for the overlord. Have you ever thought that if everyone believed you and treated an impostor as the real Lord Dizun, how much damage would it do to the Lord Dizun? You're simply too willful." She pursed her lips tightly as she put on a magnanimous and virtuous look. "You're the Imperial Madam, so you should take up the responsibility of the Imperial Palace's mistress. Don't always do things based on your own preferences, you should also consider the overlord." Her attitude was just short of saying, "You're not worthy of Dizun, you're not worthy of being the mistress of the Imperial Palace." The impostor caressed Mu Qiulan's head, a hint of gentleness seeping out of her shimmering almond-shaped eyes. He raised his thin lips and said, "I really like Lon, more and more." Mu Qiulan lowered her head shyly. When he lowered his eyes, sneaking a peek at Yi Qing Luo, he shot a complacent look. She wanted to see how Yi Qing Luo was going to turn the situation around. Even if Yi Qing Luo explained that the person beside her was the real overlord, there would also be people who would question it. Unless, Yi Qing Luo could produce some special evidence. Proof that the impostor was not the overlord. Mu Qiulan was not worried about this. After all, if Yi Qing Luo really had the evidence, he had already taken it out earlier. He wasn't trying to trick the impostor. The two of them were so similar. It could definitely pass off as genuine. His heart was valiant and spirited, but when his gaze fell onto Yi Qing Luo, the smile on Mu Qiulan's face froze. Because Yi Qing Luo had her arms crossed over her chest from the start to the end, with a "I'll just quietly watch you make things up" attitude. The cold arc on her lips seemed to be filled with ridicule and ridicule. As though she was looking at a jumping clown. Totally, not putting her in her eyes. Mu Qiulan's expression slowly twisted as her eyes turned scarlet and sinister. Slut. Slut. What was she laughing at? You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.